The year is 1962. India, newly independent, seeks its own path in a bipolar world. Prime Minister Nehru champions non-alignment, envisioning a world where nations like India can forge their destinies. Nehru finds a kindred spirit in Mao Zedong, leading to the popular slogan, Hindi Chini Bye Bye. The early years of Sino-Indian relations are marked by optimism and cooperation. But beneath this harmony, tensions over the poorly demarcated border begin to brew. By the late 1950s, Sino-Indian relations sour as border disputes escalate. India's forward policy, establishing military outposts in disputed areas, is seen by China as a threat. Border skirmishes break out, setting the stage for a larger conflict. Confident in its military, India miscalculates China's intentions. On October 20th, 1962, the Chinese PLA launches a surprise offensive. The Indian army, unprepared, is routed. The swift Chinese advance shatters India's sense of invincibility. The brief conflict leaves a lasting impact on Sino-Indian relations. Tawang, a strategic town, falls to the Chinese on October 24, 1962. The speed and ferocity of the Chinese advance expose India's weaknesses. The fall of Tawang sends shockwaves through India. The Namkha Chu River becomes a battleground on October 20th, 1962. Indian troops, outnumbered and outmaneuvered, suffer heavy casualties. The battle sets the tone for the rest of the conflict. The Namkha Chu becomes a symbol of the human cost of war. As the situation worsens, India faces a dilemma: negotiate or fight. Nehru appeals for international assistance, but responses are lukewarm. India finds itself isolated, facing a determined adversary. In Aksai Chin, the Chinese launch an offensive to secure strategic interests. Indian troops, outnumbered and outgunned, are forced to retreat. The conflict highlights the broader geopolitical struggle in Asia. News of defeats sends shockwaves through India. Public outrage grows, demanding a strong response. Nehru addresses the nation, vowing to defend India's integrity. The war becomes a watershed moment, exposing the limitations of India's policies. Panic grips New Delhi as the Chinese advance threatens Assam. The Indian military struggles to regroup and defend. The situation creates a massive refugee crisis. On November 21st, 1962, China declares a unilateral ceasefire. The announcement surprises the world and brings relief to India. The ceasefire marks the end of the brief but impactful war. For India, it is a bitter reminder of its vulnerabilities. The 1962 war leaves a deep scar on India. India embarks on military modernization and strengthens ties with the West. Nehru faces criticism and Sino-Indian relations turn to mistrust and rivalry. The border dispute remains a major flashpoint. The legacy of the 1962 Sino-Indian War continues to cast a long shadow over relations between the two Asian giants. The border dispute remains unresolved, a constant source of tension and mistrust. Both countries maintain a heavy military presence along the LAC, and border skirmishes erupt periodically, a reminder of the fragility of the peace. The war also shapes the geopolitical landscape of the region. India, wary of Chinese intentions, emerges as a key security partner for the United States and its allies in the Indo-Pacific. China, for its part, strengthens its ties with Pakistan, India's arch-rival, further complicating the regional dynamics. Despite several rounds of talks and confidence-building measures, a lasting solution to the border dispute remains elusive. The legacy of the 1962 war, the betrayal as it is perceived in India, continues to hinder efforts at genuine reconciliation. The 1962 Sino-Indian War serves as a cautionary tale about the complexities of international relations and the fragility of peace. It highlights the dangers of miscalculation, the enduring legacy of historical grievances, and the challenges of managing relations between rising powers. The war reminds us that even in an age of globalization and interdependence, the spectre of conflict continues to haunt the international system. The 1962 Sino-Indian War sends shockwaves through the international community. The Cold War, already fraught with tension, takes on a new dimension as the world watches two major Asian powers engage in a bloody border conflict. The conflict also exposes the limitations of non-alignment, the foreign policy championed by India, which suddenly appears naive in the face of naked aggression. The United States, deeply embroiled in the Vietnam War, finds itself in a delicate position. On the one hand, it sees India as a potential counterweight to Chinese influence in Asia. On the other hand, it is reluctant to alienate Pakistan, a key ally in its Cold War strategy and a recipient of US military aid. The Kennedy administration ultimately provides India with limited military assistance, mainly in the form of airlifts of supplies and non-lethal equipment. The Soviet Union, while officially neutral in the conflict, leans towards supporting India, its long-time ally. Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev publicly criticizes China's actions, accusing it of adventurism and warning of the dangers of escalating the conflict. However, the Soviets stop short of offering India direct military aid, mindful of their own complex relationship with China. The 1962 war highlights the complexities of the Cold War and the challenges faced by newly independent nations trying to navigate the treacherous waters of international politics. It also underscores the limits of non-alignment as a foreign policy doctrine, exposing its vulnerabilities in the face of realpolitik and power politics. For India, the 1962 war is a moment of truth for its non-aligned foreign policy. The war exposes the limitations of trying to remain aloof from the Cold War rivalry. Nehru faces criticism at home for his handling of the crisis. Some accuse him of being naive in believing China would not resort to force. The war forces India to reassess its strategic priorities. Non-alignment cannot guarantee security in a dangerous world. India realizes the need to build a credible military deterrent and forge strategic partnerships. China's decision to unilaterally declare a ceasefire and withdraw its forces after achieving its military objectives takes many by surprise. This unexpected move prompts speculation about the motivations behind China's restraint. Some analysts believe that logistical challenges posed by the approaching winter in the high Himalayas played a role in China's decision. Others argue that China, having achieved its strategic goals of securing Aksai Chin and inflicting a humiliating defeat on India, saw no need to prolong the conflict. The ceasefire also demonstrates China's awareness of the international implications of its actions. A prolonged conflict with India could have drawn in other powers, particularly the United States and the Soviet Union, escalating the situation into a wider confrontation. By showing restraint, China avoids a larger conflict and bolsters its image on the world stage as a responsible power. However, China's restraint does not signify a softening of its stance on the border dispute. Beijing makes it clear that its territorial claims remain non-negotiable. China's message to India and the world is clear. While it seeks to avoid a wider conflict, it will not hesitate to use force to defend what it perceives as its core interests. The 1962 war, though brief, marks a significant moment in China's rise as a regional power. It demonstrates China's growing military capabilities and its willingness to use force to achieve its objectives. The war also highlights China's strategic acumen, as it skillfully manages the international fallout of its actions and avoids getting bogged down in a protracted conflict. In the aftermath of the 1962 war, both India and China faced the daunting task of picking up the pieces. The war leaves a bitter legacy of mistrust and resentment. India embarks on a major program of military modernization. It expands its armed forces and focuses on mountain warfare. China consolidates its control over disputed territories. It builds a network of roads and infrastructure in Aksai Chin. The 1962 war has a profound impact on South Asia's security. It contributes to the India-China rivalry as a defining geopolitical feature. The 1962 war haunts Sino-Indian relations decades later. It left an indelible mark, shaping strategic calculations and fueling mutual suspicion. In India, the defeat is a reminder of Chinese aggression. China views the war as a validation of its military strength. The war highlights the potential for conflicts to escalate. The legacy of 1962 casts a long shadow over the border dispute. The decades following the 1962 war witness a dramatic transformation in China's fortunes. While India grapples with the challenges of economic development and political instability, China embarks on a path of unprecedented economic growth, emerging as a global economic powerhouse. China's economic rise has profound implications for the regional balance of power and for Sino-Indian relations. Under Deng Xiaoping's leadership, China implements economic reforms, opening up its economy to foreign investment and embracing market forces. The results are nothing short of astounding. China's economy experiences double-digit growth rates for several decades, lifting millions out of poverty and transforming the country into the world's second-largest economy. China's economic success translates into growing military might, as it invests heavily in modernizing its armed forces, developing advanced weapons systems, and projecting its power farther afield. India watches China's rise with a mixture of awe and apprehension. On the one hand, India recognizes the potential for economic cooperation with China, its largest trading partner. On the other hand, India is wary of China's growing economic and military clout, viewing it as a potential threat to its regional hegemony. The economic gap between the two countries widens, adding a new layer of complexity to the already fraught relationship. China's economic rise fundamentally alters the dynamics of the Sino-Indian relationship. It creates a power imbalance that India struggles to address, fueling anxieties and competition. The economic dimension becomes intertwined with the political and security issues, making it even more challenging to find common ground. The 21st century ushers in an era of intensified competition between India and China. Both countries, driven by their own ambitions and insecurities, seek to secure their interests in a rapidly changing world. The rivalry plays out on multiple fronts: economic, diplomatic and military, adding a new chapter to their complex and often turbulent history. Economically, India and China compete for resources, markets and investments. Both countries are major importers of energy and raw materials, leading to competition for access to these vital resources. They also vie for influence in developing countries, offering loans, aid and infrastructure projects as part of their respective charm offensives. The economic competition, while not necessarily adversarial, creates friction and fuels a sense of rivalry. Diplomatically, India and China find themselves on opposite sides of several regional and global issues. India strengthens its ties with the United States, Japan and Australia, forming partnerships aimed at counterbalancing China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific region. China, in response, deepens its strategic partnership with Pakistan, India's arch-rival, and expands its diplomatic and economic footprint in South Asia, a region traditionally considered India's backyard. The competition between India and China is not a new phenomenon, but it takes on greater significance in the 21st century as both countries emerge as major players on the global stage. The rivalry is fueled by a complex mix of historical grievances, strategic calculations, and national pride, making it one of the most consequential geopolitical dynamics of our time. The enduring border dispute between India and China continues to be a source of tension and instability in the 21st century. Despite several rounds of talks and confidence-building measures, a lasting solution to the boundary issue remains elusive. The lack of a clearly demarcated border, coupled with differing perceptions of the line of actual control, leads to frequent misunderstandings, transgressions, and standoffs. In recent years, there has been a noticeable increase in the frequency and intensity of border incidents between Indian and Chinese troops. These incidents, often involving patrols crossing the perceived line of actual control or face-offs between soldiers, highlight the volatile nature of the border dispute and the potential for miscalculation and escalation. One of the most serious border confrontations in decades occurred in 2020 in the Galwan Valley, a remote and disputed area in the western Himalayas. The clash, which involved hand-to-hand combat, resulted in casualties on both sides, marking the deadliest encounter between Indian and Chinese troops in over 4 decades. The Galwan Valley clash sent shockwaves through both countries and raised fears of a wider conflict. The recurring border standoffs underscore the fragility of the peace between India and China and the challenges of managing such a complex and sensitive issue. The lack of trust and the legacy of past conflicts continue to cast a long shadow, making it difficult to find a mutually acceptable solution. The future of the Sino-Indian relationship remains uncertain, characterized by both challenges and opportunities. The two Asian giants are locked in a complex dynamic, marked by competition, rivalry, and the ever-present potential for conflict. However, there are also compelling reasons for cooperation and engagement, driven by shared economic interests and the need for stability in a volatile region. The border dispute continues to be the most contentious issue in the relationship. Finding a lasting solution to this long-standing problem will require political will, diplomatic skill, and a willingness to compromise on both sides. Failure to address the border issue will continue to cast a shadow over the relationship, hindering efforts at building trust and cooperation. Beyond the border dispute, India and China face a range of shared challenges, including climate change, terrorism, and pandemics. Addressing these transnational issues effectively will require cooperation and coordination, creating opportunities for dialogue and confidence building. Both countries are also key players in multilateral forums, such as the BRICS grouping and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, providing platforms for engagement and potentially fostering a more cooperative relationship. The Sino-Indian relationship is one of the most consequential bilateral relationships in the world, with implications for regional and global stability. Navigating this complex relationship will require both sides to manage their differences, build trust, and identify areas of common interest. The future of Asia, and indeed the world, may well depend on the choices that India and China make in the years to come. The year is 2024. Over 6 decades have passed since the guns fell silent in the Himalayas. The conflict left an indelible mark on the relationship between the two Asian giants. For India, 1962 remains a wound that refuses to heal. The defeat shattered the nation's sense of security. The betrayal felt by India continues to shape public perception of China. The war forced India to confront the realities of power politics. It led to a reassessment of its strategic priorities. The legacy of 1962 is evident in India's determination to never again be caught unprepared. Today, India and China stand as the world's 2 most populous nations, their combined weight accounting for over a third of humanity. Their economies are among the fastest growing in the world. Their technological prowess is rapidly advancing. The relationship between the dragon and the elephant is one of the most consequential bilateral relationships in the 21st century. The economic rise of both countries has fundamentally altered the regional and global balance of power. This competition plays out on multiple fronts: economic, diplomatic, and military. The path ahead is fraught with uncertainty, but the stakes are too high for anything less than a concerted effort to find a modus vivendi. The enduring legacy of the 1962 war, the betrayal as it is perceived in India, continues to cast a long shadow over the relationship, hindering efforts at building trust and cooperation. The lack of trust manifests itself in several ways, from the heavily militarized border to the suspicion with which each country views the other's actions on the world stage. The border dispute, unresolved for over 6 decades, remains a festering wound, a constant reminder of past conflict and a potential flashpoint for future tensions. Both sides maintain a heavy military presence along the line of actual control, engaging in frequent patrols, incursions and face-offs. The risk of miscalculation or accidental escalation is ever present, as demonstrated by the deadly clash in the Galwan Valley in 2020. Beyond the border, the lack of trust spills over into other areas of the relationship. India views China's growing economic and military clout with suspicion, wary of its intentions in the region and beyond. China, for its part, sees India's growing strategic partnership with the United States as an attempt to contain its rise. These suspicions make it difficult to build a solid foundation for cooperation, even on issues of shared interest. The price of mistrust is high. It diverts scarce resources towards military spending, fuels a climate of fear and suspicion, and hinders cooperation on transnational challenges such as climate change, terrorism and pandemics. Overcoming the legacy of mistrust is essential if India and China are to build a more stable and productive relationship in the 21st century. Despite the challenges, there are glimmers of hope for a thaw in the Sino-Indian relationship. Both countries recognize the need for dialogue and cooperation, driven by pragmatic considerations and a shared interest in regional stability. Economic interdependence, cultural exchanges and people-to-people contacts offer potential avenues for building bridges and fostering understanding. Trade between India and China has grown exponentially in recent decades, making China India's largest trading partner. This economic interdependence creates a strong incentive for cooperation, even as competition in other areas persists. Both countries also recognize the importance of maintaining stability in the region, cooperating on issues such as counter-terrorism and disaster relief. There are also signs of a growing realization within both countries that confrontation is not in their best interest. The economic costs of a conflict would be devastating for both sides, and the geopolitical fallout would be unpredictable and potentially catastrophic. This realization has led to a renewed emphasis on dialogue and diplomacy, with both sides engaging in regular high-level exchanges and exploring confidence-building measures. The road ahead for the Sino-Indian relationship remains long and arduous. The legacy of past conflicts, the enduring border dispute, and the strategic competition between the two countries will continue to pose challenges. However, the growing recognition of their shared interests, the potential for economic cooperation, and the imperative of avoiding conflict offer hope for a more stable and productive future.